Welcome to the latest edition of the Forty20 podcast. Sky Sports' Phil Kaplan is here. How are you, Phil?
Emotionally drained, but for all the right reasons.
Why did you not have a magazine in front of you on the telly? I was shocked to see Brian Carney's there and you didn't have this. You weren't waving this in front of him.
I was going to make it into a bandana and wear it, but there wasn't time.
Also here, you see, when I was young, which was a long time ago now, I was the only person at school with a double-barreled surname. Now they're everywhere, including in the Rugby League press box. And I would say it's like looking at a younger me, but that's far too offensive, Louis. It's Louis Chapman-Coombe. Louis, what are you doing? Why are you here? What's going on? How did you end up in Rugby League in the first place? That's the first thing I need to ask you.
Yeah, well, it's a bit of a weird one, really. As you can probably tell by my voice, Rugby League isn't the thing where I'm from. I'm from Exeter, so big rugby union country.
Hang on a minute. Hang on. None of that. No swearing on this podcast.
No swearing on this podcast. The other code, I'll call it that. And I had a season ticket at the Chiefs since I was 11, been a big fan. And when I moved up to Leeds, I lived directly behind Headingley Stadium. So I could literally see it in my bedroom window. And I was like, oh, I'll give Rugby League a go. Didn't really know anything about it. I think when I was a kid, I knew Bradford Bulls, Leeds Rhinos, St Helens, and Wigan, and that was it. Gave Rugby League a go and loved it ever since. So I've been hooked.
Obviously, the areas around Headingley, as all our listeners will know, some of the best areas of Leeds. And you must have had one of the great student houses there.
Yeah, me and my girlfriend moved up in 21 into a little flat. It was quite nice actually, but it was really convenient to go to the rugby. It was literally a 1-minute walk. It was come out of our house, turn left. Oh, we're at the rugby. So it'd be criminal not to go.
Better than the cricket. And I've been listening to that all day with Doige at Scarborough. Although as much as I'd like to be at Scarborough, I'm glad I'm here with you, who were both there on Friday at Leeds. Phil, I mean, Tell us about it from a perspective of someone who was there. I'm sure most of the people who were listening were not there and watching on TV. Well, you both are, but Phil first, what was it like?
I think it reinforced what Leeds as a club do best. I think there are some people that have looked at their performances of their men's team on the field and said, are they still a big club? And then you have a night like Friday night, for which, again, we have to pay tribute to Sky and their contribution. I thought it was beautifully and sensitively handled, not least because obviously two of their presenters were Barry McDermott and Jamie Jones-Buchanan, who could tell the story as well, if not better than anybody. But there was a danger that it was going to be overpowering, because although we were almost 3 weeks into the passing of Rob, and there had been Wembley and there had been a game at Hull, it was almost like this was the homecoming, and everybody was going to outpour grief, and we'd lose the fact that it was billed as a celebration, and it's finding that balance, and it's really, really hard to do so between joyous celebration and commemoration and watching Rob's dad break down and 15,000 people sharing a tear with him. And to get that balance right, I thought was fantastic in that opening hour. And I'd seen a little bit of the running order, and I was sort of wondering about whether it was the right thing to do was to end it with a Frank Sinatra tribute on the field, singing My Way. And obviously we didn't know that Lindsay and the kids would be on the pitch. Everything that they were involved with was left up to them until the last minute. I was thinking that might be a sort of a tacky way to finish it, maybe. But actually it was spot on perfect. That the video, it was synced to the fact that the family were then given a walk of honour off the field. It was actually the perfect ending, and virtually everything that happened that night showed Rugby League in its very best light. And I don't think it mattered who you supported or if you were tuning in, whether you knew a lot about Rugby League. And although the game was always going to be secondary to that, actually the game became part of the evening as well. And I guess for me, the memory I'll take out of it more than any other is Brodie Croft, and not the bit that we saw on Sky where obviously he broke down, but we were fortunate enough to be in the press conference afterwards, and the way he spoke and the reverence with which he held the event, bearing in mind that he never played with Rob, and he wouldn't have known him particularly, other than maybe seen him occasionally around the stadium. But the fact that everybody was as one, the fact that the try that eventually turned out to be the winning try was scored by the guy who was playing number 7 in the Leeds shirt. It couldn't have been better scripted, choreographed, and presented. And it is a bit like the night of when the band got together again for the last time in 2020. It is one of those nights that if you were there or if you're watching it, you will never, ever forget, I don't think.
You're slightly more detached from this all, Louis, because obviously you're newer to rugby league than both of us. So,
yeah.
What about Rob Burrow's impact for those new to the rugby league bubble? How did you see him and the events on Friday night at Headingley?
Well, the whole thing, I've said it to a few people, it on Friday, it just felt like an honour to be there, to be a part of it. It was, so my first game when I went to Headingley was when Rob Burrow came out for his, I think it was his book launch in 2021. And that was the night with him and the South Stand and that flag and everything. So I've kind of been invested in the story since, and from a rugby unit, from the other codes thing with Kevin Sinfield, I've really kept up with it as well. And in work as well, I've really followed the story, and it was just such an honour to be involved in the day, and the club and Sky really nailed it on the head with all the tributes and stuff. And it was beautifully handled, even to the programme. The programme was a love letter to Rob Burrow. I've got it here. It's going to take pride of place in my office someday. It's good. It's got that little flip chart of his try in 2011. The whole day was just such an honour to be involved in. But on Rob, he was such a really inspirational figure, both on the pitch and off the pitch. And I kind of found out about him MND side first, and then the player. I know a rugby league fan might see the player first and the MND side, but looking from an outsider's perspective, I was like, oh wow, this guy is raising so much money. And then came across him as a player, and I realized he was a brilliant player. And it's now having to, he's that person where you can see the player and the inspirational hero that he was with his MND fight.
I think it's difficult for us for listening, because we have seen him for his whole career and throughout this recent battle, and the impact he's had on the wider world. It kind of still surprises me at times. I don't know why, but it was such a, from a viewer's perspective, a perfect night. And I don't think Brian Carney gets enough credit for how good he is as a genuine person on TV and how well he does his job. I know that sounds like a strange thing to say, because obviously he's a professional TV presenter. He should be able to do that kind of thing. But no one has ever had to do an hour of TV like that before in the history of rugby league, and probably sport. I can't remember anything like that before in any other sport. It was unprecedented almost.
And I think the other thing to bear in mind, and I don't think we appreciate it enough because we're not part of it, is to do it live as well, where there are no second takes. You, as a presenter, you do have to hold the whole thing together, and you do have to be reactive to it, because it's not scripted. You don't know what people are going to say. You don't know how the crowd. It's one thing doing it in front of a live camera. It's another thing doing it in front of 15,000 people when you set off, and to be able to keep the director's words in your ear, the timing, which it has to be absolutely spot on. Listen to what people are saying and respond to what they're saying. Sensitively handle it. He added a bit of humour a couple of times. He was talking about Barry's love handles, which was perfect, because every so often you have to break it and then move on to the next bit. And the fact that Danny Medeiros was telling his own story by coming over literally for 72 hours. And, why is that so significant? Well, because how many other people has that ever been done for? It just is a measure of everything. And the fact that there were 70 or 80 ex-players there of varying degrees of status. I mean, there were some players there who didn't play very much for the Leeds first team, but had probably come under Rob Moore as a coach of the academy, right through to guys who'd played the night before who just wanted to be there, and blokes who delayed going away this weekend to be there on the Friday night and put their travel back. Had they been going via Manchester Airport, they'd have had to do that anyway. But I think you're absolutely right that you shouldn't underestimate the consummate skill of the presenter that holds that together, and we are very lucky to have him. And I do think that that is, again, another program that is going to be replayed ad infinitum and will never age. I think because the values of the sport came through as much as who are we actually talking about and what have they done. And every time the generation sees it and goes, I've not heard of this guy, I'll go back and find out a bit more about him. They'll do it because the quality of that program and that hour before the game was so good. If you then look at it in the round of the 3 hours that you were, encompassing 7 o'clock when it started to 10 o'clock when the match finished. And I know we'll talk about each individual game over the weekend, and I actually do feel we've had a pretty special weekend across the whole range of Super League matches. I'm not sure that if they'd have sat down in the Sky Wagon beforehand and scripted how they'd wanted it to go, it could have gone any better. And I think Leigh must take a huge amount of credit for that as well. I think they more than played their part. I think their fans were fantastic. The flag that they bought and unveiled was hugely respectful. The fact that Jackson was walking around with a signed Leigh ball that Derek Beaumont had given him and he wouldn't let go of it. The story behind that of Rob's first game at Headingley that his dad had taken him to was against Leigh, and Rob, being the impish 5-year-old that he was, couldn't understand the difference between Leeds and Leigh because they sounded the same and thought his dad was cheering the wrong team. All of that just lent enchantment to the evening. I think already mentioned him, and no doubt we will when we talk about the game, but I've not seen emotion in somebody scoring a try like Brodie Croft in both of his 2 tries. It was almost as if the whole of the expectation, frustration, exasperation, exhilaration of everybody who was there was encapsulated each time he put the ball down. The first time he's making a number 7 gesture with his fingers while the try's gone up to be checked, even though it looked to all the world like there wasn't anything wrong with it. But the second one was, and again, I think we're very fortunate to go into press conferences and it becomes a headline in the days following, but so meaningful when you hear it for the first time. And he basically said, I've never scored a try of that length before. I didn't think I was that quick. I assumed that I would be caught, but there was somebody else there or something else there with me that got me over the line. And again, he didn't even have to mention Rob's name. It was just that it was perfect. It was beautifully pitched. It was incredibly meaningful. And I think his reaction to the whole night, his breaking down on Sky, it just couldn't have been more perfect.
What you won't have heard on that second try was Chris Kendall when he went up to the video referee saying he was too quick for me. That's why he went. That's why he checked the ground because he wasn't there, which was a nice moment of amusement for those who were listening to the video referee. 18 points to 10 win for Leeds. Louis, what did you make of the game itself? I mean, it's difficult because there's all this emotion beforehand. Then they've got to play rugby, and Leeds pick up the win.
Yeah, I thought that was probably Leeds' best performance of the season, particularly with the middles. Michalewski and Justin Sangare were both brilliant, and they really got Leeds on the front foot in that early period. Mick, he's come under fire from various platforms, but I spoke to him after the game actually, and he said that he'd taken some of that personally, and he channeled it into his performance. And I think he was really a big part of why Leeds won, because he was just so physical in the contact. I haven't looked at the stats yet, but his post-contact meters must have been through the roof. He was really trucking and trailing through people. As Phil said, Brodie Croft, that might be the single best performance I've seen this season from Brodie Croft. He was absolutely at the heart of everything that Leeds did really well. Alfie Agile on the wing, he was he was quite something. And I think Ned McCormack deserves a shout out as well. He was, he has such good feet at the line. It's really hard to explain why he's so good, but he has such quick feet at the line. But he packs a punch to break through the tackle, and he was doing that really well in that channel. I thought he was brilliant, and he did the same for Halifax a few weeks previous as well. So he's obviously building through, getting senior minutes under his belt, and now really taking Super League by the horns. But yeah, no, I thought Leeds were exceptional on Friday.
I think there are two things to mention, and obviously we're not going to devote the whole programme to Leeds, but firstly, I thought it was immensely commendable that Rowan Smith and his wife were there, which again says more about what an occasion it was as opposed to what it means to me. Relieved of his duties late on Wednesday afternoon. Somebody like Ned McCormack, Alfie Edgehill, they've come through the system under him. He needs to take a lot of credit for their development, and whatever people may think of him as a coach and a person, to turn up in what was going to be a near sellout crowd, where he would have had to have passed innumerable people, sit in a main seat in the North Stand and want to be there to pay his respects, I think spoke volumes of him, and also added to the occasion, made it even more special. The thing that I think Leeds deserved the most credit for was their goal line defence. I think we counted maybe 5 occasions where they held up Leigh. I mean, Leigh started quite slowly. How either team played after that atmosphere and build up, I have no idea. If I had a hat on, I would take it off to both of them. But Leeds started fast, and Leigh I think, got a little bit caught up in Leeds' fast start and didn't respond as well perhaps as Adrian Lamb would have wanted them to. But then when Leigh did get a foothold in the game, admittedly at 18-0 down, Leeds' goal line defence was absolutely sensational, and something that it hasn't been as good as that this year. And obviously they now need to back that up next time they play and the time after that. And who knows if they can go on a run or not. But that is a key ingredient of seeing how a team are going. And if they can harness that, along with some big running meters from their pack, along with Frawley and Croft seeing to get a bit more of a combination, I think we saw for the first time. And they strike whoever plays in the 3 quarters. But I would have thought Leigh would have targeted that left edge of the 2 young players more than they did. But the only times they went down, they got absolutely no change out of them. And I think that's to the credit of the 2 young boys. And maybe the season isn't quite over for Leeds, and everybody has written them off. And with the greatest respect to London, they've got them at home next. And the way form has gone this year, you would think that might be another 2 points that they would put in the bank. And then they play people like Warrington and Salford, who are around them in the table. And I think the sense of optimism that the season started with is probably back now after Friday night.
Looking at the league table, Leeds are 2 points off the playoffs, 14 points above London. So someone explained to me how they're in the doldrums and it's the worst Leeds ever, which, we all know is not the truth. And I know there's more clicks in sensational stories about Leeds Rhinos than possibly most other clubs, say Huddersfield. But some of the reporting about Rowan Smith last week, before he lost his job, I did not understand as well. It's almost as if, I don't know if he'd been out and kicked some cats or something of some sections of the Rugby League media or something, but it just seemed very, very strange. And whether he was the right man or not, it doesn't matter. So who's going to take over then? Who's going to take over, Phil? Guys, James Simpson on Saturday, and he says he's not qualified enough, so it's not him.
Well, again, if you believe the press from Australia, Brad Arthur may or may not have had an interview. You listen to Ian Blease in the press conference he gave to talk about the removal of Rowan Smith. And I still do believe mutual consent in this particular case does mean mutual consent. And I did see a lot of headlines and articles written that use the word sacked. I think, again, that's unfair. I thought, interesting in the press conference that Ian Blease said he might look at an interim appointment. You wouldn't have to have an interim appointment if you're looking at Brad Arthur, because he theoretically could come straight away. I know the only thing I do know is that Leeds love a smokescreen, So I think they would be quite happy if people were thinking it's nailed on Paul Rowley, it's going to be Brad Arthur if it's not him. But I think, if you remember when David Furner came, not a huge success. When Rowan came, none of those names were being linked with Leeds until they were actually announced. So I'm not sure it's a done deal. I think tough for Ian Blease to walk into that situation in his first week. He'll want to get this right. He'll obviously take a lot of advice. He's very well connected. After Friday night, and again, you can't really judge it on maybe one game, I'd be almost tempted to leave it with Chev Walker and Scott Grix until the end of the season, and they may well be the interim and do the work behind the scenes that needs to be done to get the person that you think is going to be there for the next 3 to 5 years. I think there's one candidate who fits the bill. I don't even know if he'll be interviewed. I don't know if he's interested in the job. I don't know if he would be on a short list, but I do think that the DNA of the way he plays, and as Louis was saying, where we are with the young kids that are coming through at the moment, you've got a decent foundation to work with. I'd be ringing Leigh Briers. I'd be getting his phone number and saying, what you've done at Brisbane, taking them from the cellar dwellers of the NRL to a grand final, what you've done with somebody like Reece Walsh, what you've done with whoever is playing at halfback, you've rejuvenated the older players, you're bringing through the younger players. That is exactly the scenario. I do think that if you go to Australia and get a big name, a Brad Arthur or even a Jason Demetriou, you know that they're auditioning to go back to the NRL. I think if you got Leigh Briers to be a head coach because he wants to step up, and he's not going to be able to do that in the NRL for the foreseeable future. He's earmarked as a fantastic assistant, but nobody's going to take a risk on him as a head coach at the moment. You could offer him that at one of the clubs that the Aussies do monitor in terms of coaching under pressure, then for me, he'd be the perfect appointment. But I say I have no inside knowledge on this at all.
Louis, any clues?
No, I agree with Phil. I think Chev and Scott would be good interim appointments. I was really impressed with Chev in particular in the press conference. He seemed like he understood that Leeds haven't been their best selves, and I think going back to your point earlier, I just think that comes with them being inconsistent more than being awful. I think that's what's getting fans a bit irate with it, and he had a sense that Leeds do need to do a job now. So he kind of has that DNA and that background already instilled in the team. But I think Leigh Briers is a name I haven't seen mentioned at all. But when Phil was saying it there, it clicked. I think he would be really good. I listened to him on the Five Live podcast, and the way that he talks about attack, that it's so inspirational, and it makes you just want to go chuck the ball around and just really give it a go. And I think that would bring the best out of players like Brodie Croft, for instance. He's that player that thrives on that really loose, attacking, flamboyant style of rugby. But I think Paul Rowley is, if not a done deal, I think he has to be there in the conversation. Ian Blease is obviously a man from Salford. He's already said that he's a coach that he admires. But in terms of playing as well, he's got Andy Ackers there, who I know is injured. But Andy Ackers was Salford's, was at the heartbeat of that Salford team. Brodie Croft was at the heartbeat of that Salford team. They have players who can play that style. That's what Leeds have at the moment, and they just need a coach who can deliver that type of that style of play. So I think Paul Rowley would be a brilliant appointment. But yeah, he's also done it at Salford as well. He's been brilliant at Salford. So if he was to go to Leeds, he would do probably the same job, if not better.
I don't want to say that there's nothing much more you can do at Salford, because it looks at Salford fans, and we have to mention them because they beat St Helens yesterday afternoon, 20 points to 18 in another one of these interesting Sunday afternoon games. Nearly 6,000 at the whatever Salford Stadium is called these days, and a very good performance from the Red Devils. One could say Saints perhaps having an off day, but Salford had to do the job and did it.
I don't think Saints did have an off day. I think the fact that Saints got back into the game late on and edged ahead, you'd have put money, if you were a betting person, that they would have seen out the job. So for Salford to fashion the winning score late on in the manner that they did, I don't think there was anything fortunate about that performance. And again, in terms of matches that I've watched this weekend and enjoyed the most, that would be it. I thought that was a tremendous game, high skill, high intensity, loads of drama, few talking points like when is a goal attempt, not a goal attempt. And just the way Salford hung in the game when in previous years Saints would have steamrolled the team when they got ahead. I thought that was an exceptional Salford performance, and every time they're asked a question, they seem to come up with an answer. They will have odd weeks where it doesn't go for them, or they won't have the team out that they want. But that performance, particularly considering Tim Laffey limped out of the warm up, the rearrangement they did to stick Sam Stone in at the centres, and it didn't affect the way that they play. We talk about DNA, identity, all that kind of culture, whatever you want to call it. Whatever Salford's is, all the players have got it. And even late on in that game, when they're under pressure, nobody panics. And Nene McDonald fashions, one of the offloads of the season, and all of a sudden they've taken a game that they deserve to take. I loved it. I thought it was a fantastic game. We were saying last week on the podcast, and I thought we were going to get it this week with a couple of the early matches in the round. I thought because we're in mid-season and it's a long season and too long a season, and injuries have kicked in, the standard was waning. I think we went on an upward curve this season and this weekend. And that game for me was the one that stood out among all the others. Mind you, I didn't see London and Wigan. So,
well, I was supposed to watch it, wasn't I? But I watched Leeds and Leigh instead. But Wigan won 36-0, and at least this week I've remembered to mention London, because last week I completely forgot that they played St Helens. And well, I did see Lee Kershaw make a good interception in that game. Obviously, he didn't come to anything because London ended up with no points. I was going to call him Nick Kershaw, which tells you how tired I am today, but there you go. Castleford 12, Hull KR 13. Castleford were going to nick it late on, but Hull Kingston Rovers with that drop goal from Lytton, enough to get the points. They are third in the table, level with St Helens. Wigan top on 24. They've got that game in hand against Leigh, which is coming up it's in a few weeks, isn't it? It's going to be on a Tuesday night or something weird. Because Wigan are too successful because they got to the final of the Challenge Cup. You missed Wembley, Louis. You were at the other place. You can't mention Rugby Union, by the way. So it's not bad. It's not like the olden days. But you were at Twickenham, where they also had Rob Burrow tributes as well.
Yeah, no, that was quite something. I was probably the only person in the press room with any rugby league connection, and weird story actually with it. So we got our little press accreditation passes, but I didn't have a lanyard, so the only one that I had was my Betfred Super League one. So I had to go around parading Betfred Super League at the Gallagher Premiership final. So that was quite funny. But no, their tribute was quite fitting as well. They had a big picture up of Rob Burrow on the screens, which in and itself is symbolic. Who would have thought a rugby league player would ever be put up and celebrated at the home of Rugby Union? So that was again, really honoured. Like, it was, just a magical moment.
The important question is, did you get cake? Because we didn't get cake at Wembley, so we were disappointed.
We got a full buffet. So I turned up, and it's a selection of chicken burger, beef burger, some chips, coffees, the works. We had it all there. But the press room at Twickenham is really weird to find. It's kind of hidden away. So it's tucked around the side of Terrace A, and then you have to go up an escalator to go up to the press benches, and then to go to the actual press conference room, it's all the way over the other side. It feels a bit like when we go to Headingley and you have to cross over the south stand via the east stand to go to the north stand. It's a bit like that. You have to kind of you have to navigate a maze to get there. But no, it was really cool at Twickenham. It was really good. I wish I was at Wembley though, but that's the difficulty of doing both codes when they clash. It's one or the other, and unfortunately, I picked the other one.
Wow.
But I will go to Wembley at some point.
It'll be okay. Be there again next year. You get 3 games for the price of one. It's good stuff. Because we got the break coming up, I don't want to start talking about anything else necessarily much yet, because we'll dip into it in the second half of the program. Did you play Union at a younger age then? Because you look like the kind of you'd have been one of those people, the line out.
Yeah, so I started playing Union when I was about 7, and when I moved to Devon. So I know I say I'm from Exeter, but I was born in London. I lived in London until I was 11. Moved to Exeter when I was 11. Played down there. I got picked up by Chiefs when I was 17. Got released at 18, so that was a fun little story. Still play up here, so I play for a club called Moortown, which now actually have a rugby league team as well. So there's a bit of a cross code thing going on. So shout out to the Moortown Mambas in Yorkshire Men's Division 6. But no, so yeah, I still play. I play front row. I'm not like a prop like Michalewski by any stretch of the word. I'm a scrummaging prop. I make 1 meter in a carry, and that's about it. But yeah.
You don't fancy switching? You don't fancy trying it then? You could come across.
I would love to play. I would absolutely love to play. I don't. My position is a bit of a weird one. Because I've got quite nice hands, so I'd love to play 6. I'd love to play 7, potentially 13. A bit of a ball player. But I would be awful. Yeah. I would be absolutely awful.
And I've seen enough awful players at Wakefield in the last 30 years. So it wouldn't be too much of a surprise.
They weren't awful this Sunday by any means.
You're from London now, which means you're Lancastrian in terms of rugby league geography, because Fulham used to play in the Lancashire Cup, and Don Peters, isn't it, Phil? That's the name we always go back to, because when Origin came back in the early 2000s, they picked to London and just, I don't know why, but they did. But Lancashire won the women's Origin, Phil. That's no good, is it?
Fortunately, nobody knows about that, and so we're not going to tell anybody.
Didn't do goal kicks or anything.
I must say, I thought Hull KR were very resilient, but if I was the coach of the team, I would have been disappointed. I know that Willie Peters was saying those are the ugly games you've got to win if you're going to be taken seriously, but I never thought they had complete control over that, which part of that goes down to Cas being a lot more resilient than they've been in the early part of the season, or some of the games in the early part of the season, not all of them, which is great because you can see progress at Castleford. And, again, I think Craig Lingard and Danny Maguire are doing as good a job as they can, particularly with a recent turnover of new personnel, which helps the team. But obviously, it's hard to integrate as a coaching staff. But I think Hull KR are going to need, and they know they don't need me to tell it, they're going to need to be more ruthless than that if they're going to make the shake-up at the end of the season. They clearly are going to finish in the top 6. They're going to have a say in, obviously, where the title destiny goes, and it might not be there, and they're getting better every year. But I just think when they have games like that, you got to be a bit more ruthless. And I think it's great that Elliot Minchella's going to get his first England cap. Sean Wayne has now picked his squad. It's a really interesting one. But sometimes weeks off every other week don't help teams in continuity and flow, and it will be interesting to see how Hull KR respond, because I would have felt that Willie Peters probably wanted his team on the training pitch all this week.
A couple of more men's Super League games to get to once we come back from the break. Got to mention the wheelchair Super League. I mean, have you seen the big kerfuffle in France last week? I mentioned the grand final. I didn't see this until it was pointed out to me on Saturday. Have you seen this, Louis?
No, I haven't, unfortunately.
Right, so imagine the scene. There's who was the other team? Mont something or other.
Montserrat or somebody like that.
Catalans versus some other people from France. There's a guy with dreadlocks goes over to score a try. Seb Bashara, former Golden Boot winner, Englishman, accidentally pulls his hair. All hell breaks loose. Seb Bashara ends up on the floor. The guy with dreadlocks tries to run him over. Someone comes in and gets him in a headlock. Someone jumps in from the crowd. Even more funny, the ref from the World Cup was there. The French ref from the World Cup got involved.
The one who was having a strop.
Yeah. So it's all kicking off in France, as they say. I think Seb Bashara got a yellow card, and that was it. So for the French who, accuse us in the United Kingdom of playing a more physical style of wheelchair rugby league, for them to accuse us of that.
London Roosters in the
Yes.
wheelchair. We didn't expect them to come from 14 down to beat Wigan, the reigning champions. So after week 2, sets it up quite nicely. You were at Leeds.
I was at the edge. It was warm. 62-24 for the Rhinos. So we're 2 from 2 in the wheelchair Super League. I was trying to get the table up. Here we are. But it's not been updated on the RFL website, so I can't. but Leeds will be top because they won 2 of 2. And there's only 5 teams in the division. But Hull are improving. And I spoke to Martin Norris after. In fact, if you're watching or listening, those interviews from Saturday will come up in the middle. And there you go. So it's like Cameron Hills, never played rugby of either kind. Attended his first training session of wheelchair rugby league 4 months ago. Now he scores a try on his Super League debut. Well, these foreign people from outside of the north of England with striking hair. But an impressive debut. And Tom Halliwell scored. He wears number 7 as well. So it's all good. Just a word to Hull. Please get some names on the back of your shirts. So I know who more than one player is, but it's like going back in time. So those interviews to come. We'll round up the rest of Super League. Louis was at the home of Rugby League on Sunday, so we'll talk about the Championship and more here on the 4020 podcast in a moment. Your debut, you scored a try.
Yeah.
How did you get involved in this thing in the first place?
So I was just going to, I went to the person at university who organises sport because I was like, I was in a wheelchair since March last year, and I wanted to get back into sport. I've been playing cricket my whole life, and I was missing the that competitive, get in the fight, get in the game, and I needed to do it. So, and she put me in contact with Ed, and then I went down. I think it was 2 days after that when there was a taster session on Wednesday, 21st of Feb, and having looked back, absolutely loved it, and it's brilliant.
Super League debut, try on debut as well. How did it feel going out there?
I'm not gonna lie to you, I was insanely nervous. I didn't sleep at all. I was sat here the whole morning. I was trying to play it cool, sit here. My hands were going all over the place. My belly was feeling all sorts. I couldn't eat because I felt like I was just non-stop, But it was excited nerves. I was really excited to get out there and get going and get it started. And then I said to Ewan, I said, as soon as I get hit or hit someone, I'll be fine. It's just another rugby game. And I settled in pretty well. Need to get a better chair because that's heavy. I had a bit of trouble to start with my positioning. I was a bit all over the place, but I've fixed that on the second time. Yeah, managed to get a try, and it was. Yeah, I don't really know how to explain it. Just really happy.
As long as you're in the right place at the right time, that's all that matters.
Yeah. Well, I've been doing a lot of work in the reserves recently, obviously, and I've been playing as more of a centre. So being out on the wing, I was a bit like, where do I go? Where do I supposed to be? And it took me a while to find that. And then second half, I came on, and my position was much better. I was more involved, and yeah, I mean, it paid off. I should have had the second one, but I can't catch. So. Yeah.
And you're a cricketer. Were a cricketer.
Yeah. I'm very harsh on myself. I think it was difficult. It was down by my bootlaces, but being critical of myself, I should have caught it. Really, I should have been in for 2, but it's what it is.
Many transferable skills between cricket and wheelchair rugby league.
Yeah, I mean, throwing, catching, coordination, that thing of teamwork as well. And one of the things with cricket is about backing up. It's about if the ball's going to a fielder, you kind of shadow that so that if they miss it or it takes a weird bump, then you're there to cover it. And this is very similar. You're with your teammates, you're covering each other, you push hard for each other, and then when it goes well, you score a try.
So what are you going to do now? You're going to be going back to all your mates and saying this is you should come down not just to watch but to play as well.
Yeah, I mean I've been trying to bribe my flatmate to come down and get involved at a training session, but she and my girlfriend as well. But they're a bit hesitant. I think they were surprised by the amount of contact there is, and to be fair, so was I. The first time I got in the chair, I was like, am I supposed to hit people? And then I remember Tom actually, he pushed me backwards a little bit and then went, right, stay there. And came and absolutely smashed into me and was like, yes, you're supposed to hit people. I was like, got it. And that's one of the things I love about the sport, because a lot of the time in a wheelchair every day is about how can people help me to do the things I can't do. And this sport is everyone in a wheelchair smashed 7 bells out of each other. I took an elbow in the face. My knee's going to have a nice bruise, but that's what it's about. It's contact sport, and that's what I love about it.
I would say we're much better than last week. We are still in a transitional phase in terms of where we are as a club. We finished 5th in the league last year, narrowly missed out on the playoffs. For us, it's aiming to try and get into that top 4. As I said, we were much better than we were last week. There was a few tweaks here and there that we know what we need to do to kind of improve, ready for our next game. So, we're confident going into the rest of the season.
You've been there and done it in the past. What are the little things you need to do to get into that top 4?
It's just about decision making. So today you'll see, if you watch the highlights back, you'll see that where we drop off in defence, we're making big holes ready for Leeds. Tom Halliwell's doing his little drop his shoulder. If the defensive line stays as a unit, that next man is tackled. You see it in the running game where the defensive line, if you start retreating, that's where the hold came. And if you watch the game back, that's what we do. We had a little bit of falling out and a few disagreements that we need to sort out, which we'll sort. We've already addressed that and we moved on. But in that period in the first half, we conceded 3 tries because we lost our composure. So it's massive that we've got to, you've got to stay composed and keep moving on to the next job and just transition. Managing
frustration then as well, but going forward, how did you feel the team gelled today?
We gelled pretty well. There were some good passes. There was some, the ball hit the deck a few times, but you've got to. It's high. The style of rugby that we're trying to play is high risk, high reward. Yeah. So when it comes off, it looks great. When it doesn't come off, you've got to back yourself in defence that we're a strong unit, and we turn Leeds over. We turn possession over in our own half on occasion and kept them out. So we've just got to transition, move on to the next job, get the ball back, and do it again.
Really good, yeah, really, really good. The players are up for it. They were playing what was in front of them, heads up rugby. No, it was good. It was good. Everything we kind of niggled away at last weekend, we tidied up and we went out there, and it was really good, mate. I'm really proud of the players, how they adapted to it all, yeah.
I'm not seeing last week's game, but it sounded like it was a bit of no defence at all from either side.
Yeah, it was a bit of a weird one, and we picked up a few injuries, it was a bit of a weird one. I think first round nerves for both teams. Which is expected, it's going to be a short, condensed, pressurised season, but that's what we all wanted. But yeah, I'm absolutely buzzing for the players. I thought they were brilliant. I thought the 2 players who are new to the squad, Cam on debut and Becky only in her second game, they were fantastic. Got straight in, and even our new players now are gelling with the senior players, and that's just fantastic to see as a coach, because nobody looks like an outsider. They're all part of the bigger team.
Having a development squad, reserve squad, to call it, how important is that in terms of giving you more options more than anything?
It's absolutely massive. Like, Cam started playing for us this year, never played wheelchair sport before, few reserve games, and you can just see that in him already, that ex-semi-professional cricketer, you can see that sport ability in him. So we just had to kind of transfer that over to Wheelchair Rugby League, and it's been fantastic. And Becky used to be part of this team a long time ago, and seeing her come back's fantastic. And she's done a few reserve sessions, and she's straight in at Super League, and she wants to be. She wants to kind of get stuck in the deep end, and it's fantastic for her.
Wigan next week, but you've got no Nathan Collins. So what's wrong with him?
He's I'm not sure.
Right with him?
Yeah, it's either his fingers, his knuckles, or his wrist, or both. But yeah, he's fractured his hand. He's in a cast. He's been in a cast for about a week. But it is what it is, and that's sport. And today's been integral, being on the pitch, communicating with me and between the players, but you can't just build a team around one person. We just mentioned it then with the new pathway we've got. We've got 2 new players coming in, so Nathan being injured gives other people opportunities, and that's as a coach, it's exciting more to bring in the new players and nurture them than sometimes it is to kind of get onto the players who've been doing this a decade.
We will say, is there a revenge mission for last year's grand final in next week's game? Does that bear any thought into that one?
Nah, I don't buy into any of that stuff, mate. It's a cliche, but I'm just like one game at a time. All that stuff, whatever happened yesterday is in the past, so whatever happened in last year's grand final, mate, you worry about stuff a year ago, you're worrying about things you can't change.
The press, the media, they've been all week have been coming up with names for the Leeds Rhinos men's job. Your name's not been out there. I think I might have tweeted it once, but does that disappoint you that you've not been named? You're a grand final coach and everything.
Well, apparently if you're put your CV in, you have to get an interview. I don't know where I heard that, so maybe I'll do it just for fun. But I don't think I'm qualified yet. I haven't finished my level 3, so until I finish that, I don't think I'm qualified to coach professional, is it? So I'll stick with the wheelchair guys for now. That the stuff I know inside and out.
James Simpson there ruling himself out, if I could speak, of the Leeds Rhinos head coach's job for the men, that is, which means that I'll have to put him at the end of the break there. He's not got his badges, Phil. I think he's at level 3. I should know because he's just said it, but
He's halfway through his level 3 and he's got his dissertation to do and a couple more practical units, but he's going to be around the coaching scene for quite a while.
He's coming on the podcast. He will be in the studio at some point. Hopefully we'll be live next week. Fingers crossed. We'll see what happens, but that is the plan. Got microphones and everything, so I need to get them used. So we'll see what happens.
As there's only 2 internationals and not a lot else in, obviously, of Super League interest, but Championship, there's a full round of matches in League One. But yeah, it'd be good to go live when there's very little to talk about.
Well, I mean, we'll fill an hour and a half because we always do somehow. 2 games left in Super League. It was a very close weekend, wasn't it? Apart from the obvious. Hull FC 18, Warrington Wolves 24. I don't know if either of you saw much of this. And obviously, I was at the wheelchair, so I didn't see it. But late try from Matt Duffy, who I think we said last week, didn't we? what he does in attack is why he's in this Warrington side, and 2 tries in the game exactly why he is in the Warrington side.
Yeah, I think from an attacking point, he's brilliant. It's one thing that's really caught my eye is how they use him on tackle 5. If you watch it, they'll play him as that runner on tackle 5, so they get quick play the ball to allow George Williams to put in a kick into somewhat broken field, and that is a really clever way that they use him. But he's a bit like Jay Field. He's lightning quick and can do some quite magical things when he gets the ball in hand. But defensively, I think he kind of needs to shore up a bit, as we saw at Salford. I'll say that was a quick counter attack to defend him, but he's got to be switched on.
Warrington's crisis is now over, Phil, because they're back to winning ways.
No, probably not. I think they're not playing as well as Sam Burgess would like them to, and certainly not with the intensity that they were pre-Wembley. And I know there's peaks and troughs in every season. They will build up again, I'm sure. And having George Williams, it does make a huge difference to them. But they're not clicking. They're not firing. I think Hull are showing a measure of improvement. Again, Deneve Barmforth, I thought, was excellent out of dummy half. I do not understand why they would sign another hooker, as they've announced today. I don't get that. It seems to be that every time there's a young player who is starting to make a mark, they're signing a more experienced player in that position. At some point, you've got to let these young players have an extended run and see how good they really are. So yeah, Herman SAS had a great game. I don't know if that had anything to do with his uncle Ali Lawatiti being over here watching him. But yeah, whole marginal improvement still, and they've got the crowd back with them, which is the main thing. Warrington still remain to be convinced that when the real shake-up comes at the end of the season, that they're going to be one of the teams that can influence where that trophy goes.
And Catalans 22, Huddersfield 18, 22-0 at half-time. The veritable game of indeed 2 halves. I can't believe Harry Rushton's waited until now to score his first professional try, but he has. It's watched him twice at the World Cup, and he cut his hair in between. But a win for the Dragons. But Huddersfield, well, they'll be happy with the second half. But again, they're dropping further back thanks to Leeds' win on Friday night.
Yeah, I just think Huddersfield are they're showing signs again of what they did last year. They're really good one week and then they're terrible the next. They just can't seem to string 2 games together. And I know they've got the off-field stuff with Jake Connor and Ollie Russell potentially leaving at the end of the season, so they're not quite sure what their spine's looking like. But at the same time, they need to have that consistency, because when they play well, they play very well, as we saw in that second half. To push Catalans all the way after being 22-0 down is quite something. I know Catalans are in a bit of a rut themselves, but when Huddersfield can actually string some good, decent plays together, they can be quite a good team. And I think that's all they need. They just need that consistency and that gelling. They just need to click.
It was the most bizarre game, I have to say, because was almost as if Huddersfield gifted Catalan most of their opening 22 points. That the errors that they made, no matter who coaches the team, you have to stand there and defend at the end of the game. The fact that players were passing into touch or trying to offload balls when you're trying to get out of your own area, they just aren't on. And I'm sure they're not coached to do that. That to me is confidence. When you haven't got it, you'll try. So the most bizarre opening to the game from a Huddersfield point of view, if they were trying to make a point, they look better when Ashton Golding's on there. I cannot understand why he starts on the bench. And that I don't know what would be his best position if he started. Clearly, his body shape has changed over the last year, and I think that's to get him in predominantly in that hooking position. But I'd start with him. I really would, and that's no detriment to Adam Milner or Tom Deacon, who they bought this year. Because every time he's up, you talk about people whose enthusiasm is infectious, like Brodie Croft was at Headingley on Friday night. As soon as Ashton Golding comes in, he's lifting all the players around. And when he scores the try, you can see how much that means to him. And again, absolutely no reflection on Adam Clune. But when he was forced off, Huddersfield then started to play a little bit more coherently. And I don't think they were ever at the point where they were going to win the game. And the Dragons were, I think, just about in control for most of it. But there would be a real concern from Steve McNamara that at the end, they weren't convincing. They had a really good first half. They needed the 2 points and back on the horse, get all of that. But uncharacteristic Catalan performance, because normally when they're 22-0 up, then they're not hanging on for the last 5 minutes of the game.
Tell me about Carter Gordon, Louis, because I'm assuming you might have seen him play, because I don't think me or Phil have, but he's on his way to the Gold Coast Titans, which I don't. He's done a good move. I don't know.
It's a bizarre one. It kind of caught quite a few people off guard from a rugby union point of view, because it's weird that Rugby Australia have let him go as opposed to him going to the NRL, because for Eddie Jones put his faith in him at the World Cup and was like, I'm taking one fly half and one fly half only, and he took Carter Gordon. He had Quade Cooper, he had all these different options that he could have taken at 10. Bernard Fowler, that was the name I was looking for. And he took Carter Gordon by himself to test this young player, and he's gone to the NRL after a season. And so that was the bizarre thing. But I think he will be quite a good player in the NRL. He's a very tidy fly half, if that's the way to describe him. He does things, he plays the ball quite nicely. He's a good distributor. And yeah, I think he will take to rugby league quite well. But it's just a weird move from Rugby Australia to actually let him go. That's what caught everyone off guard.
It's like over here 40 years ago, Phil, where the names would go, but the money's in Australia now. And who's the next? What's he called? The fella at Leeds, John Gallagher. That's it.
The money's not there for rugby union, and Melbourne Rebels have been disbanded. And obviously, this week we're going to be watching second state of origin in Melbourne. They're talking about 77,000 people being there. Obviously, the Storm are top of the league, and they've got more juniors and women playing than ever before in Victoria. Obviously, which is AFL country. So it's interesting. I think the sport is thriving in Australia at the moment, and that is to the detriment more than anyone else of rugby union. I think we're even seeing it in New Zealand, where the Warriors are inconsistent, but they're selling out virtually every home game. I think one of the Asia Pacific games this year will be in Christchurch, probably between Australia and New Zealand. That will hasten talk of, is there going to be a second New Zealand bid at some point to have an NRL franchise? So, yeah, I'm not surprised he's gone, because I think he can see at his age that his attributes will fit. He's guaranteed a professional rugby environment. He's not joining one of the clubs where there's going to be a huge level of expectation the minute he goes on the field. And I'm told, and I'm obviously defer to Louis on this, told that he can look after himself, that physically he's a guy that will relish the contact side of the sport, and he won't shy away from that. So whilst he's got the distributive skills and he's got the kicking game, You need, if you're a back in particular, to be able to stand the physical pressure that you're going to be put under. And I'm told his build is such that he probably can do that.
Yeah, I think I'd agree on that point. During the World Cup, they played Wales and Fiji, and he was taking quite a few big, heavy, late hits, if anything. And he was standing the test. He was really putting himself in harm's way at times, but he was really good at taking those. But I think he will be a really good player in the NRL. But just on Phil's point with the Warriors, I think they're really good because they are one team in New Zealand. I think that's why they do so well. I think if a second team was to come in, it would almost be to the detriment of the Warriors because they are the New Zealand Warriors. If you branded them as Auckland Warriors, I don't think you would get that many people from Christchurch, from Otago coming to watch or watching them on TV. So I think that's why they do so well in New Zealand, because they are New Zealand Rugby League. People will obviously watch the Kiwis, but their fix of rugby league will come through the Warriors more than anything. So I think that's why they do so well.
Up the was. Apart from this week, they weren't very. France-England coming up this week. Congratulations to the French women who qualified for the World Cup, and to Wales, who will be at their first ever Women's World Cup, which, to say they played their first game in 2019, so wouldn't have been able to qualify for the last World Cup, is quite impressive. So well done to Wales. Well done to France. At the World Cup in 2016, we think, in Australia, we think. Is that ever going to be announced? I mean, come on.
Yeah, it rolls back every week because there are so many things to announce. There's the EU 2026. There's where the 18th franchise might be. There's the Asia Pacific Championships. There's the bidders for the 28, 29, and 30 World Cups. They're all there. But in what order they're going to announce them, I have no idea. I think that the next announcement, World Cup wise, is likely to be the men's European qualifying, of which there are 4 nations, and what the format of that's going to be. I don't think we're breaking an exclusive by saying that's going to be played in France at the end of this year. But I think there might be an announcement on that before we even get to hear where the nations who qualify for it will actually be going, even though we all know it's Australia.
Didn't we do the draw last year already? Was that what was that? What was that? Was that the European nations stroke? What? Yeah, but then it got scrapped because France. You must. When you walked into rugby league, Louis, did you imagine it would be this wonderful cavalcade of stuff that it is? Because we're used to it.
Yeah, I was baptized quite instantly by the Twitter page Amateurish Rugby League, and that kind of gave me a sense of what I was walking into. But then when the World Cup got cancelled, I was like, this will be very fun. But yeah, no, every day is fun in rugby league. There's never a normal day in rugby league, which adds to the beauty of the sport. It really is its own thing, and that's why I think it's so wonderful, because it's just so random a lot of the time. There's just a lot of random stuff that happens, but I'm all for it. May the randomness continue.
You haven't got no rugby union place on CD-ROMs, have you? No, got Steve.
You will be going prematurely grey, that I can guarantee you.
Just diet like Eddie Hemmings used to do. That's what Brian Carney said on the telly the other week. That was shocking. Can't believe he said that. I was going to ask you something else, Louis, before we moved on to the championship, but I've completely forgot. Oh, yeah, that's it. It's okay me saying, I can't believe the World Cup's not been mentioned. The Commonwealth Games, that's not got a home yet. So, it's not. We're not that bad. We're not that bad. That's a real shambles. So that's the thing.
Going back to the internationals this weekend, I don't think I've ever seen a less promoted international. That the fact that the men's teams and squads are not announced until the Monday before. There's a rush to get media done this week before the team leave, and I think the squad that's been picked is fine. I think the opportunities for some of the men is great. I think France they brought a youngster over from Sydney Roosters as part of their squad, which. Again, the more that you can get players in and around the NRL, I know hasn't played for the first team yet, but very highly thought of by Trent Robinson, who still, I think, holds that director of rugby position with France, and has highlighted someone who could perhaps be at the next World Cup and be a key player there. I'm excited at the squad we being England have chosen. I just think it's a real shame it's not on the BBC. You know, we've got plenty of different BBC outlets these days, whether it's 3 or the Red Button, and I understand who's going to cover the cost of filming it, but somebody's covering the cost of that for it to be on Super League Plus. It just deserves a wider audience, I think, and especially as it celebrates the 90th anniversary of the game in France, which, if you don't know that story, again, is one of incredible resilience against all the odds, to just keep the sport going. It deserves a higher profile than it's going to get this weekend.
Someone should tell Channel 5 the Nazis are involved, because they'd make a 6-part documentary about it. But I'm assuming, Louis, you had to get up early to watch the England Rugby Union game the other day, because that was only on the internet as well. No broadcaster could be bothered to show the game against Japan. So we're not the only ones.
Yeah, it was on at 6:35 in the morning. So that was quite fun after finishing up some pieces at 1 a.m. after Headingley. There was a lot of coffee drank that morning, I'll tell you that for fun. But yeah, I just think I agree with Phil. I think the international game needs that promotion. It needs that accessibility to go and get it. You know, the Tonga series was fantastic. Really was. Like, the quality of rugby league was up there. The hype around it, building into that third test was really good as well. And I think that it had a lot of momentum. And then a week after, the Samoa series was postponed. You know, so the international, it does shoot itself in the foot occasionally. You know, it needs that constant rolling momentum. And I know the Samoa series is penciled in now for the end of the season, which is brilliant, by the way. That would be a brilliant series. But this test against France is equally as important. You know, he's picked a squad which is a development squad more than anything, and it's testing players out. You know, James McDonald's got his first call up. Sam Wood, who I think has been exceptional this season, by the way, really added some strike on that Castleford edge. But he's testing out different players who have performed well in Super League and haven't quite got the chances they have at test level. And so it does deserve the recognition that it needs, you know, and it will help if it goes well, it will build momentum into that Samoa series, which then in turn will snowball into another France mid-season test, so forth and so forth. But I might be wrong on this, but have Toulouse got a game on the same day?
It's the main event of the triple header.
So they've got an international game. The
95 Cup was the main event at Wembley.
Yeah. I was thinking, because that, unless, are they playing a reserve team? Like, yeah.
There aren't that many Toulouse call-ups. And to be fair to Sylvain Hull, he said right at the very beginning that French selection would take preference. But yeah, there are 3 games in the stadium, the third of which is taking on Featherstone, which I don't think kicks off local time until about 9 o'clock at night either, which is another indication that they do things differently over the channel. But yeah, I think it's wrong to say that the internationals are the curtain raisers to a championship game, because that's like saying the Challenge Cup final is a curtain raiser to the 1895 Cup, which clearly it isn't. But I think it's Toulouse's way of saying, if you want us to get 10,000 people in the stadium, then give us a Toulouse game as well. And they probably looked at the way Featherstone are playing at the moment and thought, with a couple of men out, we could probably still take them on.
Super coach Mark Applegarth. Well, that 18-6 down at half-time. York win 34-24 at Fev. The Natives will be restless again. Bradford 38, Doncaster 4, Batley 0, Toulouse 36. Sheffield again, come back for them against the Widnes, 30 points to 21. Barrow won away at Swinton 24-10. Swinton fans not happy because Dec Patton has left the club to go to Featherstone and then apparently go to Widnes. Whitehaven 38, Dewsbury 12. Again, coming from behind there, Whitehaven scoring 30 unanswered points in the second half. And Louis, you were at the home of Rugby League. Wakefield 46, Halifax 24. The all-conquering Dreadnoughts continue on their march to IMG glory at the top of the championship 10.
Yeah, I think it's a weird one with Wakefield this season because they are in exactly the opposite position of what they were in this time last year. I think we were talking about in the press area. I think that was it 13 losses in a row before that Leeds win last season?
Something ridiculous like that, yeah.
Yeah. So if they win again next week, they will be 13 wins from 13. But the way they're playing, I don't see them losing at all this season. The way that they, even against Halifax, were very good, to credit to them, and Wakefield weren't quite at their usual selves, to put it that way. Daryl Powell wasn't particularly happy with the performance, but to be, in their understanding of it, a 6 out of 10, maybe even a 5 out of 10, to still put 46 points on a team who are very competitive is quite something, And Darrell Alfert's on that left edge, grabbing 4 tries. He could have had 6. He could have had 7. They blew that many chances for him, but yeah, Wakefield is just absolutely steamrolling the championship this season. Even with Sheffield, Sheffield aren't a pushover, and they absolutely murdered them in that home game in the league, and then in the 1895 Cup final. I just don't see Wakefield losing at all this season.
Another 7 goals from Max Jowett, and again, it goes back to the ongoing debate about having a full-time team in what is ostensibly a part-time division, because we seem to see this every year now, Phil, where one team at the top dominates, and it's just a matter of whether they can maintain that into the playoffs.
Yeah, I think it's squad depth. I think if you look at the respective teams that Louis watch, Halifax, I wouldn't say they're hand to mouth at the moment, but they are relying on dual registered players, loan players, as well as the core of guys that go out there. And I suspect that Liam Finn doesn't really know until the Thursday training session who he's got available for selection. So, if they're playing with the steel and resolve, then that's to his credit. And I know that clearly, like York at the start of the season, there were some murmurings about what was happening at Halifax, but looks as though now he's got a core of players, and then he needs to add to them late in the week. The opposite's true at Wakefield, isn't it? It's who you leave out. Daryl Powell, every day of the week, other than the day he gives them off, has 30, maybe more senior professionals in there. He can rest, he can rotate, he can accommodate injuries if necessary, and he's got competition for places. We've spoken a lot about the grading system and its merits and otherwise. One of the things we do know is if they do go up, they've already got 3/4 of a Super League team there, and if they were in Super League at the moment, then I think there'd be above 2, possibly 3 teams they're currently playing, and we know that they've got Mike McMeekin and Tom Johnson and Ollie Russell and maybe a couple of others still to come. So the great thing with a grading system when you're Wakefield, and that we don't know what the final analysis is going to be, but I think it's safe to say, looking at it from the outside in, that London are not going to accrue enough points to stay in Super League. Therefore, there is going to be a Super League place, and the team that have the most points outside of that will be Wakefield. So they are planning ahead in a way that promotion relegation doesn't normally allow you to do. And I think without having to peak for a grand final or a playoff series, which has been the undoing of Featherstone, Toronto in the first instance, it caused innumerable problems for clubs that were planning on being somewhere they weren't. I think what Wakefield are doing and what Daryl Powell has got at his disposal is the ability to almost have this year's a dress rehearsal in the Championship for next year.
Take out the top and bottom teams of the Championship. That's Wakefield, obviously, with 12 wins from 12, and Dewsbury with 1 win from 12. And it's quite a tight division. Only 10 points separates Sheffield at the top with Halifax and Swinton down at the bottom end. Some big games in the competition this week. Doncaster take on Swinton on Saturday. That is being played at Featherstone. Toulouse Featherstone, as we know, on Sunday. Barrow Wakefield, Dewsbury Bradford. Halifax, who've got the experience of the pitch, are back at Wakefield. They're at home to Whitehaven because something's happening to the Shea. Widnes Batley and York Sheffield. So that'd be a good test for Mark Applegarth's men against the I'm going to call them the league leaders now. I'm going to take Wakefield out of it. It's not fair that they're in the division. Not fair. So well done to Sheffield. Round 13 of the Betfred League One saw Keighley beat Cornwall 26-0. Rochdale winning 48-18 away at Hunslet. In fact, all the away teams won. North Wales 42-4 at Newcastle, and Oldham won 28-4 at Workington, which was on the Sportsman. Just a shame they was on the Sportsman at the same time as the Salfords and Helens game was on. Oldham top of the table, level on points with Keighley, both having played 11, but a superior points difference for Oldham. But just looking at the league table, Newcastle having come into the season with having to build a completely new squad or whatever, they're not being embarrassed in the way that other teams have at the bottom end of that table have in recent seasons, such as West Wales. I think the only time they conceded 100 was against Wakefield in the 1895, which was very early on in the season. So they're not competitive, so to speak, but they're not being embarrassed week in, week out, which is a positive when you're having to rebuild again.
Yeah, they are slowly improving. I think a big part of their problem is they've come into a league which is actually quite strong. If you look at League One, I know Oldham and Keighley are kind of the two heavy favourites to go up, but Hunslet are really in the mix. You know, they can play. Hunslet even beat Keighley at Keighley. Midlands are improving every week. Cornwall are becoming more of a competitive force as well. So I think Newcastle's thing is they've come into a division completely from scratch to a league that's actually very strong. So it's not really their fault. I know they're not playing fantastic rugby by any means, but you know, it can be, you can add that context in if they come into a really strong league. And I spoke to Dean Muir in the week, and he was saying it as well, the Hunslet head coach, he was saying that League One is a really strong league this season and everyone can beat everyone. So they've got that to contend with, plus having to gel whatever it is, 20 odd players together. So I think that's why they're not doing as well, as opposed to them being awful, as it were.
Remember when Cornwall's games were all going to be streamed?
And that team was all going to be full of local players.
I was watching the cricket earlier today, and it was on yesterday as well. 4-day county championship game, Yorkshire. I thought they were skinned. I thought that was the news at the start of the season. You had to bring back the other bloke who they owe all the money to because they've got no money. But they've got live cricket on YouTube for free with multi-cameras. And I mean, they're obviously not paying anything for the commentary because they're just taking it from Radio Leeds. But you're talking about cake and stuff. But if county championship clubs, which apparently a skint can do it, then what? And I keep going over these things over and over again, but it makes no sense. In this modern world, Louis a young person. He doesn't know anything apart from streaming and stuff. Surely you can't understand what's going on. Why can we not watch all these teams and all these games all the time? What's going on?
I don't have all the answers, Richard, but I think
but you're young, you should have.
I think Cornwall. I think it would be quite good to get a few Cornwall games streamed live, just for growing the sport in the Southwest. You know, the Southwest is a rugby of a code hotspot, and I think if you kind of put it out to the audience that when the rugby union season is over for rugby union fans, come and support Cornwall. You know, the Cornish, there's a proud sense of I'm from Cornwall, from the Cornish people. You know, being a Devonian myself, it pains me when people say I'm from Cornwall, but that's how much like there's a real sense of people people are proud of being from Cornwall. And if they get told that there's a rugby league team in Cornwall, that could really get going. You know, that really couldn't. I've actually got a mate that plays for Cornwall, Harry Aronson. And the
year before.
Oh, did he? Yeah, good bloke, Harry. We play rugby union together last season. So that's how I know him. But yeah, he's saying that the same things as me. You know, we need to grow the sport in that region just to give it an imprint to then expand from. Because if you expand from the Southwest, you're going to grow into Cornwall, Devon, build up to Somerset. You know, these areas are rugby league is not a thing there at all. And if you say rugby league is a thing here, come and watch it, people are going to go and watch it because it's new. So I think Cornwall do need to find a way to get some form of coverage. And I want to say that Radio Cornwall cover them. Don't quote me on that, but I think there's some form of coverage. But I just think they need more, especially from like the Cornish newspapers or the Southwest, like Cornwall Live, for instance. Just chuck a reporter down there and get that exposure up, because that's what it needs.
Surely some Leeds related headline they can make, to get the clicks. That's all.
So are you averse to a pasty then? I
do like a pasty, yeah.
Yeah, but how a Devonian, you wouldn't go anywhere near that. It's like we can't eat Lancashire hot pot.
No, there's not that.
We're not allowed.
The pasty has transcended the border. The main issue is cream tea. It's the Cornish do it. So the Devon way is cream on first, jam on top. The Cornish way, which is the wrong way, is jam on the bottom, cream on top. And so my girlfriend is also from Exeter, and she does it the Cornish way, and I take it personally. I really do take it personally, and I even tell her. She's like, she builds it looking at me, and I'm like, don't do it, don't do it. She does it and then starts giggling. So that's quite fun when we have that. But that's the only thing. Pasties have transcended the border.
Do you know anyone who's got any money who wants to put a team in League One? Because obviously, was it Gould and Bramley? They've thrown their hats into it. I want Scarborough to come back. Now, we've seen Scarborough at the weekend. You think, what a great place to go and watch rugby in the summer that would be. Of course, we played in Scarborough in the winter. That wasn't quite a good idea, Phil, was it?
No. I think there's interest in Bedford, and obviously they're putting together wheelchair as well as men and women's teams. There's interest at East Anglian Vipers. Don't know whether it's a bit too premature for them to be looking at a semi-professional side. I think the problem would be that, and Louis just highlighted it, we've probably got the most competitive League One that we've had since it was instituted. Do you want to dilute that by putting another team in who will have to start, as Newcastle have done, without access to a core of players who can play at semi-professional level? I understand that mathematically it works because you then don't have so many blank weekends for the teams. The danger would be if you bring in another team, the quality overall will be lessened.
Have I missed anything, Phil? Have we done? Has all the news been covered? I'm not going to go through the England squad. People can read that. So.
I think we probably have. I think we should finish as we started, and I go back to the point that Louis made right at the beginning, that Friday night was a privilege to be there, but I think it reflects incredibly well on the sport. I mean, I know that we said right at the top that Leeds deserve enormous credit, and they showed why. Some people did question, are they still a big club on the basis of some men's results? And there aren't too many that could have done it as well as they did it. You don't just do that in 3 weeks. You do that because the organisation you've got and the people that work in it know what a big event looks like and how to pull it off. And they've got enough people there to do it and do it right, and quality people as well. But I think if you're a fan of rugby league, this has been a fantastic weekend. For all the sorrow and sadness around the fact that we lost somebody that is universally loved. And I think that's the other thing we should never forget about, Rob. I can't think of too many players that play for other clubs that would have had this outpouring that everybody has had, no matter who they support, for who Rob was as a player and what he's been since he was diagnosed. And we're not going to lose that, but it reflects immensely well on us all who support rugby league. And I just think that if nothing else has come out of this weekend, we're back. I think we do say too often we don't get the coverage that we would like. We don't get the national press. The press box, Louis will confirm, was absolutely full on Friday night, and there were people in there who wouldn't normally cover rugby league. There were feature writers. There were more radio stations, national and local, than would go to a normal game. It headlined the national radio and television. I think we should be very proud of our sport after this round, and particularly what happened at Leeds, and also I would say Salford's performance against St Helens. There was a lot to be proud of this round of games. I think
I said to someone on Saturday, it was such a great occasion to watch from home. I just hope that we don't have to do it again anytime soon. Louis, thank you very much for joining us. I've got to say,
having me.
I enjoy listening to you speak about rugby because you explain things, and I genuinely don't have a clue what's going on in the field. That's why I sit in the corner and ask the questions. So I think your analysis of how players play and what they do, we need more of that in the sport. So I'm glad you're doing that. I'm glad you've found your way to rugby league, because we don't get wasted on rugby. It's just fat blokes falling over each other. Not you. Let it down at the last minute. But where can we find you? If we want to find you, where can we find you?
So I'm writing now for Love Rugby League. I'm very frequently in Rugby League World magazine, League Express as well, and social medias. I'm on a LCC journalist, so drop me a follow. And yeah, thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
I mean, I only asked you about 6 months ago, so that's the glacial.
Yeah, it's been in the works since probably the Castle for Tigers Media Day, and it's been a long time coming. But I'm glad I've come on, and I will happily come back if you will have me. Yeah,
we'll get you in the studio, and then you can see the magic behind the real program. This is just the warm up. So thanks for joining us, Phil. Thanks as ever. Enjoy the weekend. We should hopefully be back live on Monday, but if we're not, you can blame me. It will be my fault. But thanks for listening, and thanks for your continued support. Even though James isn't here, leave us a positive review on iTunes, please. Thank you. Bye.